Sampling the response. Keep in mind that during the round out and flare, the ideal landing technique is one where you pull back consistently and smoothly on the elevator as the airplane approaches the ground at ever-decreasing descent rates until the main gear wheels gently squeak onto the runway, and the squeak being made by the wheels and not the pilot's tiny biceps. This ideal rate of aft elevator application is a continuous aft pull on the elevator. Now let me represent this concept with a graph. The yellow line represents the ideal aft pull on the yoke, thus influencing the airplane's elevator control during the landing flare. And as you can see on the left side of the graph, the vertical axis represents the aft elevator travel during the landing flare, and the horizontal axis on the bottom represents the airplane's pitch, the nose pitch, during the flare. And as you can see, we start at 0% with a very low pitch, 0% aft yoke pull. And then as we pull, it's essentially a linear pull all the way to the airplane's touchdown attitude, which is a nose-high attitude. And then, of course, red represents over-controlling of the yoke control during the landing flare. And this is something we don't want to do because it's hard on the passengers and probably hard on the airplane. It's not uncommon for student pilots to move the elevator control in an exaggerated back and forth motion during the flare. Hopefully, this isn't followed by commentary such as, oops, too much, oh, not enough, oop, too much, nope, not enough, hoochie mama. Well, you know what I mean, right? What these students are doing is trying to compensate for over or under controlling pressures on the elevator during the flare. And this certainly isn't ideal, but the behavior will diminish once the student has more experience at landings. This push and pull behavior on the elevator control by student pilots is understandable, given that as soon as the airplane enters ground effect, the downwash on the tail diminishes and the airplane pitches forward. Students typically overcorrect with an excessive aft pull on the elevator control. The amount of aft pull necessary to flare the airplane is compounded by the fact that the aft pressure required to keep the airplane in the desired flare attitude constantly changes with the reduction of airflow over the tail as the airspeed decreases. So it's perfectly understandable that a student pilot might have difficulty finding the correct amount of elevator back pressure to apply. There is, however, a very interesting technique that experienced pilots use to help them maintain the precise elevator back pressure necessary to produce a smooth landing. Known as sampling the response, this technique allows them to precisely control the airplane's rate of closure with the runway, thereby minimizing the chance of over or under flaring the airplane. Here's how it's done. During the flare, apply continuous elevator back pressure, but do so in small pull and release motions. For instance, the wavy green line in this graph represents the tiny pull-release motions on the yoke that are used to maintain the threshold of pitch control during the landing flare. And this means that the slight pull and release motions on the yoke allows you to sense the threshold at which additional pull results in the nose attitude raising, thus allowing you to maintain the airplane in the precise attitude desired for the landing flare. Think about pulling just far enough aft so that the nose would begin to rise beyond the desired pitch attitude if you pulled even a tiny bit more. As you hold the elevator in this position, you've technically arrived at a point that I call the threshold of control, a point at which pulling further would raise the nose. But as we've just discussed, this threshold is always moving elevator aft as you slow down. So you have to keep sampling the elevator response to maintain that threshold of control. It's the constant recalibration of an aft moving elevator resulting from this pull-release type motion that allows you to make the airplane's nose stay right where you want it to stay and let you retain immediate control of the airplane's attitude. This means that the airplane's nose shouldn't unexpectedly pitch forward or downward during the landing flare. Now you'd think that the airplane would be jumping up and down like one of those mechanical bulls in a Texas bar. The pull-release motions, however, are small enough, and if they're done correctly, they're small enough, that no one in the cockpit will feel any vertical pitch acceleration, nor will anyone inside or outside the cockpit see the nose pitching or moving up and down. You will see the elevator control being moved aft with small pull and release motions during its travel. These motions are more visible on larger single-engine airplanes, where the airplane's mass requires a larger displacement of the elevator to change the pitch slightly. The proper application of this technique requires proportionately smaller forward and aft yoke movements to remain in the threshold of immediate control when flying airplanes in the weight class of a Cessna 150 or a J3 Piper Cub. It's worth trying this technique on a few landings to see if it gives you a better idea of how to flare your airplane. It's certainly ideal to apply one continuous increasing pull on the elevator during the landing, and you should always strive for the ideal. On the other hand, some folks have a difficult time flaring that way. So be it. While they may never be the Muhammad Ali of landings, at least they won't float like a butterfly and land like a bee. An exaggerated form of the sampling the response or pull and release technique is frequently used by pilots operating deep in the region of reversed command while making short field landings on extremely short fields. Slightly larger forward and aft movements on the elevator lets them know how much, if any, aft elevator travel is still available to them, as well as how effective the elevator response is. Now here are two examples of pilots using the threshold of control to make very smooth full stall landings. Watch the yoke move back and forth slightly during the round out and the flare. As a final note on this technique, some pilots refer to this as fishing for the runway. Okay, I'll take the bait on that. This is a fishnomer. Okay, misnomer. Fishing for the runway is supposedly something pilots do when they have no clue as to where the hard surface is below them. They push and pull on the elevator slightly, waiting for those wheels to make contact with the ground. Well, this is more myth than reality. It's actually quite rare to see a pilot fishing for the runway, though I've seen a few who hunted for one. If you want to pass your IFR knowledge exam or your private pilot knowledge exam, then check out my 50-hour and or 40-hour Instrument Pilot eGround School or Private Pilot eGround School, respectively. Not only will you pass the exam, but you'll learn more about the essentials of IFR or VFR flying that you just won't get in other ground training programs. Why? Well, because I've been instructing for over 5 decades, have personally written and illustrated 7 aviation books, 5 of which are aviation textbooks, delivered training programs in all 50 states and many European countries, and have won countless awards from the FAA for my aviation training programs. In short, you won't be taught by a private pilot with limited experience and a basic ground instructor rating. Instead, you'll receive quality ground training that makes it easy and fun to learn. So visit rodmachado.com and check out the large selection of aviation educational courses.